All right, it's time for some deck reviews. We had the Materia Cup Portland. It was just last weekend. First big tourney of the new set. It's kind of fun. Usually, North America isn't the first region to play with a new set. Our winner, if you haven't seen it, is Ryan Chen with a variant of Mono Earth. So some really cool stuff going on here. I love this list. Notably, Ryan last set had kind of been on this Mono Earth Chaos Arc brew. And I really liked it. I think it was the best Chaos Arc deck in the format. Outside of maybe the Earth Water. But I thought it was so much more like high pressure and high action. Like the Earth Water deck is this very slow control deck, which gives a lot of decks time to play against it. I think the Mono Earth one, while still not favored into the Refia control deck, I thought it could pressure that deck a lot more effectively than the Earth Water one can. And I do think this is like the unfortunate truth of Chaos Arc. Because Chaos Arc did not beat Refia control, which is like the matchup that like it was most in the deck to combat was like these 4-color, rainbow decks. And Refia is just so efficient and so good at what it does that it just didn't care. And Ryan completely cut that out. And the star of the show here, and it's funny because I saw this card, it was spoiled. I talked about like, oh, this searches Ingus, but like this Emmett Selk is like the card that brings the whole deck together. So this is the same kind of like ramp to 5 Earth backups. You have your same like Genova Synthesis, Montleonis package that you normally do, but you also have the ability now to go Emmett Selk for Ingus, and Ingus can search another Emmett Selk, and you end up in these situations where you just get to like fart out a board out of nowhere, and it's really potent. It's actually been like the coolest thing. Like I think Mono Earth started becoming more of a thing around Opus 21 with the printing of the Mira, and it's kind of funny that like this deck isn't on any monsters whatsoever, like the Mira Zombie combo, and it's like those decks would run Leo Warrior of Light because you needed like more 1-cost targets for zombies to get back, and the more targets you have for Epitaph, the better. And then people just kind of realized that like actually it's really not that bad to just play Leo Warrior of Light and a bunch of Earth cards. I think that like in particular the printing of Limit Break Hitas, this is like the only deck in the game that's going to play 2 copies of Limit Break Hitas, really changes almost everything for this deck. And really is what brought it into prominence. But I really like Emmett Selk here. I thought this card needed a burst before it was really like this super strong good stuff card. But the way it interacts with Minfilia and Une and Montleonis and Ingus is actually really powerful. I'm not a huge Magic the Gathering player, but I know that there's a really similar combination with like Up the Beanstalk, drawing you a card if you cast a 5-cost card. And there's a lot of things that like cast 5-cost spells in Magic that aren't actually paying 5 mana, like Leyline Binding. This is like Emmett Selk is kind of like a searcher that gets a Leyline Binding in a way. Emmett Selk Ingus, like that just farts out an 8K and a 9K with like continued threat for your opponent. Something I think has been really interesting to track as well, and I don't know how many like I never in a million years thought this would be a thing until the printing of the Limit Break deck, but a lot of these like big ramp decks and or whatever are playing 17 backups in them, and you have to in Mono Earth because Miner is probably like the best thing one of the best cards you can run, but you need a critical mass of Earth of backups for Miner to work. But decks like Refia getting by with 18, 19, 20 backups, it's very interesting to see. Like I thought like backups was going to trend down, but thanks to the Limit Break deck kind of giving you a free 2 forwards, 3 forwards over the course of a game, the backup count actually can kind of inflate a little bit, guarantee the consistency there, and make up for it in other places. Also, kind of strange that we have the 3 copies of 60p Leviathan. I know this is like meant mostly to just be like, if this is a burst, then I probably win. But I almost like wonder, do we have enough like targets for it? I guess like the main thing this is meant to do is stop the Chaos Turbo deck. We'll get to that later. And if you like stack the Chaos Turbo, the Chaos to the top of the deck, and then bounce a Raijin, you feel pretty much like you're going to win that game. I had a video that I recorded about like the Chaos Turbo and the Hitler decks. I ended up just not putting it up. I was worried it would come off as like too doomsayer, a little bit too negative on the format. It's hard. I don't really want to yuck anyone's yums. I'll talk about those decks a little bit more here, which is probably just like a better place to talk about them. But also of note, we are on the Chilinka Yuri combo. I guess like with the amount of realm in the format, being able to pop an Atomos is potentially really nice. Chilinka is a fine card, and I could see a situation where you would have like a Tyro and you Yuri out the Chilinka, and like it also gives you like just a really nice dead search off of Epitaph. It's funny to say like, oh yeah, I want a dead search. That's like so nice, but like that ironically kind of is nice. I think I personally would still just run the Chilinka and then run a copy of Sid Highwind and then use Tyro or the Leo to color fix the Chilinka if I really wanted to pop a monster. Like, I think that the ability to guarantee the backups for ramp is just more valuable at the end of the day than the ability to like tutor the Chilinka. Like everything that gets the Chilinka gets her anyway. It's not that hard to get this into play if you really need to pop the monster. I really like the inclusion of the Chilinka. I'm not sold on the Yuri. The other thing that like I'm not fully sold on is the one of Hythlodaeus, and I'll talk about this a little bit. So what's going on with the Hythlodaeus is Emmett Selk searching Minfilia is great in the early game because it gives you the ability to have like a 60p, play a backup, shoot something for 8k, which is not bad. And then like late game you can get like Ingus or Une, but like having one extra target that like is relatively cheap, you know, this is a 3 cost forward effectively if it searches them itself, is pretty okay. But I kind of wonder like if we can do better. Like going by that logic, we're like you're looking for a card. Oh, Noctis as well with the Emmett Selk is really nice. Let's kind of go through here real quick. I'm amazed to not see a Shadow Lord in there. I'll admit, I think that's a card, given how good it is against Knights in particular, and how passable it is against Refia. I still like Vanille. I know that like having too many backups can open you up to you know, bricking on them, but like having the second copy of this, and then like Minfilia serves different purposes and what she can get back potentially. I just like Vanilla as a card. Ishtola could in theory get back a Leo, which could be cool. Like you could go like pitch a Leo in 2 cards for Ishtola, play the Leo, play Warrior of Light. That's not bad. Especially if you also ended up running anything like, you know, what's his name? The Suzuhisa. Like Ishtola 60p, revive a Suzuhisa, draw 2 cards is definitely not too bad. I don't think we want to run a Shantoto. I think this Warrior of Light could be fine if you like just happen to have a Leatherworker in the break zone. You could like play this early to like be a 6 cost that puts it back up onto the field and gets like a kind of beefy body into play. It is kind of slim pickings, admittedly. Like you could theoretically get Heretical Knight Garland for like a super late game. I think in general, like the best other targets would be like the Ishtola or the Aparuru or the Vanille if you needed one. Like I said, the Shadow Lord's another one just like to consider. I don't hate the Hythlodaeus. Like a 9k Brave isn't too bad. I just feel like this deck is so clean that it sticks out like a sore thumb that there's this like 60p 9k French vanilla in the deck because you're never going to go for the effect. Having 11 summons means that you're kind of trading down in almost all situations that you go for the Hythlodaeus trigger. So, but no, this deck is super cool, and it's funny. I've been like thinking about this deck a lot in recent times, and this is kind of like it's ironic because they seem to want mono wind, and they're trying to design it to be this big. I'm gonna put all like these wind characters on the field, and this is just that deck but better. Montleonis is so much better of a payoff than something like Vaughn is, for instance. And Genova Synthesis is just better than what something like a Balthier gets you. Balthier has this other stipulation on top of it where you have to play all of these other characters to make Balthier work. And at any point your opponent can interrupt you. Genova Synthesis doesn't die to a Mont, and it's a huge body, and it's one-sided, and it's very easy to do. I do also wonder if, like, the only reason to play all Earth backups is Genova Synthesis. I wonder if it's worth finding an alternative board wipe for the deck, and then playing, like, 3 copies of Lena would be the one that comes to mind. Like, kind of index into water just a little bit more and kind of get some value with it. But I mean, Lena's special doesn't have a ton of value here. It's just that like so many decks are on 25 burst now that like Lena draws you 4 or 5 cards. And maybe Genova Synthesis is just that good. There definitely is just a possibility that like Montleonis routing Genova Synthesis is just like the one of the best things you can do in this like control mid range shell. Fantastic deck. Super happy for Ryan finally getting that Materia Cup win after winning Nationals last year. And I'm looking forward to seeing what else he cooks up in the future. So, second place, we had this Earth, Water, Chaos arc. It's pretty much the same as the list from last set. The only thing that I will say, and I've said this every single time about Chaos arc, play 3 Chaos, play 3 arc. Or here's the other option that I don't know why people don't consider this. You could just not play Chaos Arc in this shell. Like, don't get me wrong, Chaos Arc is really powerful. But if you're not happy enough with Chaos and Arc to run 3/3 of it, then just don't run it at all. You still have the same really strong control tools. You could, like, bump to extra copies of Heka. You could bump to a 3rd Shantoto. You can add, like, a 2nd Shadow Lord or a Titan Lord of Crags. And you can just do that. And, because, like, the reason why I always say if you're playing Chaos Arc, you go 3/3, is Arc is a terrible card if you don't have Chaos. It's not good. You would never play this card. And Chaos is okay. You're not, like, hating that the card exists in your deck, but you would never play Chaos without Arc, and the reason you know that is because no one did that until Arc was printed. This combination of cards wasn't a thing until Chaos Arc. So, just run 3 and 3. You're going to brick on it once. But the times you brick on drawing too many Chaoses and too many Arcs are going to be offset by the times that you draw the Arc or the Chaos without the partner to it because you don't have enough of them in the deck. It came up in the finals where he got Mistdragoned with 2 Arcs in the break zone and he was just done. Like, GG. Or like you lose both Chaoses because, you know, it's just like your opponent drops a Zidane and rips a Chaos, you draw Chaos, you're done, you're cooked. It's mind blowing to me. And don't get me wrong, and the rest of the shell functions. It's not like you have to run Chaos Arc in this deck. It's I mean, like, you know, congrats to Milo for getting second. I really think that, like, there's got to be room for those. I think that, like, he added this 2nd Siren, which I don't hate. I think Siren's a really powerful card, obviously. And I guess, like, a 2nd Anima over the 2nd Arc, but there's just other things you can do in this list. The rest of it, I think, is pretty standard. No other new cards in it. I guess 1 copy of this Leviathan to get back a Chaos or Arc that goes to damage. I don't even really like that very much. Like, it's a summon for Siren, but, like, Moogle or Poo Poo are just better at this. I guess it can help, like, hand fix you, but, like, you really want more bursts, and Leviathan isn't a burst. I really don't see this card working all that much, just in general, because I think it's just a worse Poo Poo. or a worse Moogle if you're on a deck that like prefers Moogle to poo poo. Yeah, it's fine. It does the Chaos Arc thing. I just think it can be a lot better than it is. Uh, Third place, we had a Fire Water. This has been coming out a lot to try to combat some of the aggro. Being able to play all of the great EX bursts in Water alongside 3 copies of Amaterasu really gives you a good chance at playing this strong defensive game. And then using the good value stuff elsewhere. Amazed to see only 1 copy of Terra. This card is so strong in my testing. At least a 2 of in almost every deck that I'm playing that can fit her in. 3 copies of Axstar. We have to cheat it in off of the Tyvis, but that's fine. 3 copies of Zidane. You can also cheat it in off of either Axstar or the 1 copy of Phoenix. I mean, this list looks pretty solid. I like it. Definitely has a lot of potential. I almost wonder. We're on just the 1 Bahamut, so I guess we're not. It makes sense why we wouldn't be on Caius here. Yeah, not too much else to say, really. 1 copy of Surges. We have the 1 Vincent. I wonder if... I guess you have Vincent and Lunafreya, so your mode for there is Vincent, Lunafreya, and a copy of Leo. Okay. I might also consider running, like, 1 Astrologian in the deck so that I can run a copy of Luso and guarantee a backup if I need to ramp in a matchup. Maybe this deck is really meant to play off of 3 backups anyway, so, like, by the time you can do that, you don't need to. That's very possible, but just another thing that kind of pops out in my head. Then we have Chaos Turbo. Sure. Couple of like things that I'm still like just. Someone can elucidate this to me in the comments, but why this Chaos in particular? You can't play the card. If you play the card, the deck doesn't work anymore, and like the only things that revived are all named Chaos on entry. So the only thing it can be for the deck is a bad removal spell. Maybe I'm like crazy, but like I'm a sucker for optimizing this stuff. So this is a Chaos. That's a forward, right? I'm not wrong on that, right? You'll never cast it. It's a terrible card. But like you can in theory, like if you pitch like a Gilgamesh and a realm into your Ezel, you can search this as special fodder for this Chaos, right? That's got to be better than the 1 cost here. Am I crazy? Am I taking crazy pills? Like, sound off in the comments, like why you would run a 1 cost dark backup over a 5 cost dark forward for this deck. Because I genuinely do not understand this one. It's splitting hairs. It's the dumbest thing. I think it's just like slipped through the cracks and people don't realize it. But this is just a better version of the same card, as far as I'm concerned. I could be wrong. The rest of this deck, if you really want a good deck profile on it, go to Steve D in the YYT's channel. He talks about this deck a lot. I would never take this to a major tourney just because I really just don't see the player agency in it. Like, the decision making you have is to mulligan into Chaos, and then you just mill cards and hope to kill your opponent in like 2 turns, or you lose yourself. Like, the decision making just doesn't really seem to be there. Like, it's like on the list of like how powerful is the deck, like the power level is really high, but like the actual player agency and like the decision making that you have to win the game seems very low in comparison to a lot of other decks to me. I don't really enjoy playing decks like this, and I'm not going to fault anybody that does. And obviously, it worked out really well on the weekend for Jeff, who got a Nationals invite, and one of my coveted Terramats were playing it. So I mean, prop credit where credit's due. Hate the player or don't hate the game, not the player. But I really can't don't know why they didn't put a once per turn on this Chaos special, or why Raijin was printed at all. Like it really just kind of boils down to like those cards should not have been printed the way they are. It sucks. I really do like Chaos in like monster decks as like a little bit of an extra payoff. I just this list is it's something, man. List is clearly, like I said, the list is clearly okay. Like it's fine, but trying to think if there's like anything else. Yeah, just like the chaos. Like I said, someone like elucidated in the comments why a 1-cost backup is better than a 5-cost forward. Granted, like again, I know that like you don't ever want to discard a Gilgamesh BE to an Ezel, but like it does do something. So sorry for the buyout of Opus 3 Feral Chaos, by the way, in advance. Up next, we have another Fire Water deck. Again, this is just trying to stack. This is 30 bursts in it. They're so deep on burst, they added Opus 18 Pain, which should tell you just about everything you need to know. This deck reminds me a lot of like the Mono Lightning EX Burst deck of like last Nationals format, where you just like tried to kind of tempo your opponent out, and then if they attacked into you, you would just burst. Like they can't attack into you, and you're trying to go faster than they are. Furion is a fantastic card at this. Furion is very difficult to block, very difficult to deal with. A little surprised to see Larcacus in a 16 backup list. It is very cheap and efficient removal, but you are going to feel the lack of a backup eventually. Similarly, Kalmia is in here, I imagine, to deal with Witch of the Fens decks, who really didn't show up very much. Anything that did top of this event that was on water was using it for the burst count, not for the access to really powerful monsters. Kalmia is an interesting tech card to handle that, but I really don't like playing Kalmia into those decks without playing Yagrosh, because they can go Titus and use the turn off that you took to play the Kalmia to ramp into the Titus, at which point you're kind of like dead because you played Kalmia, got no value, and their witch now has free reign to do everything it ever wanted after you also got Titus. It's just like, it's the juiciest Titus target of all time. Probably juicier than even Telica. I mean, maybe not as juicy as Telica, but like still. As for the rest of it, like I said, the pain really sticks out. The copy of Kalmia without that. The rest of it, yeah, they just stacked a bunch of bursts. Yeah, I do wonder if like the Larcacus could have been something like a Vivi. A 2-cost backer that pings for 5k. Maybe it pops like a small thing. A little surprised to see Cooch Chaspel as well. I guess we're not on Porum, but like, so, and we don't have like the Ignori Bahamut in the deck either, so you have to do something to get cards off the field. Very interesting for sure. Yeah, 30 bursts, 2 copies of Luna Freya, makes a lot of sense. Up next, Matt Highline with Water Lightning. This was the other big burst deck style to come out. Very similar to the European style lists. In the same way, there's even like the 1 copy of Thancred. People are a lot bolder than I am. I'll put it that way. I really am scared of playing Thancred in a format that's going to be so heavily dominated by Amaterasu. It's just such a big tempo swing to go for Thancred to get Amaterasu. Maybe the idea is that like Hooded Man and everything else can bait out the Amaterasu or check the hand before the Thancred comes down, but I also really don't like Thancred without playing the Y'shtola that gives him haste. It's like you revive. If you have the 3 water backups plus the Thancred, you get to revive a 4-cost. I guess you play like a Porum or a Hooded Man. Hooded Man's cool to revive with it, but then you have to have another King in the break zone for it. I don't know. It just feels like a little bit like a Nombo to me, compared to how it could be. I love the Adia Cypher Irvine package. Obviously very, very strong. Kadaj, I'm a little surprised at the burst. Like, it has a burst, but like if you're going for a burst, I feel like you would just go Hitas instead, right? As like just a removal spell on a burst. I mean, Kadaj modulates the break zone, but that's you kind of take a turn off to do that. Like it's still been the same thing Kadaj has always done. I think there is a place for Kadaj in the current meta, but I would be looking for a combo card with them, something like a Xenos or a Vincent. Not sure that I love Kadaj as a standalone good stuff card like these days compared to like a lot of other options you would have access to. Even something like a Venat to me, right, where it's like this big 9K that gets to like gain card advantage, but your opponent doesn't want to remove. I think is almost like a more interesting card than Kadaj is for me at this point. And then yeah, 28 bursts. You know, 3 copies of Reef, 3 copies of Thornton, the 2 Kings, the 3 Lenas. All of the bursts in the summons. You know, is that full? Okay, just 1 copy of Aranea. You need 2 Dragoons to get with King of Burmecia. You get Kane first, so you have a Hooded Man target. This Kane has a burst. It's also like okay to play to the field. And then RNA as your secondary Dragoon target. This has just got a better burst than the Kane does. All this makes a lot of sense. This deck is very good into metas like this one where you kind of have to like burst or die. Day 2, we also had Sam Prime with mono water monsters splashing class 4th Moogle and Terra. And this is so smart. Like the reason to play mono water, still to this day, in my opinion, is Ash. Ash is just of these cards that are like based on the number of backups. Ash is the best one. It's removal. It's very the body's huge. I guess like Ingus is very close, but Ash also, if you needs mono water backups, but you can run the class Moogle, which allows you to run this Terra, and Terra has a crazy strong burst. Its interaction with cards like Mind Flayer and Leviathan are huge. This card is so powerful. And I think it also puts some very big strain on your opponent during games. You now don't want to play things out in main phase 2 because if you hit a Terra in damage, you can get Amaterasu or Leviathan for 1 CP, and now that deck doesn't work. You know, like your whole deck is going to fall apart. Really cool stuff. 3 Witch. The only 9 monsters for Witch. I mean, you do have Realm. You can get them out of the deck relatively easily. We're trying to like split the gap between Witch being generically good and trying to play the best water summons available for Terra and Citra. Citra, Medine, Luso, I think is something that people are going to start to realize is completely broken. You heard it here, or you heard it here first. This Citra with Medine and Luso is a lot. It has a lot of resemblance to Chaos Arc, with none of the bad matchups that Chaos Arc does. You don't get the hand advantage, but you don't go as minus to do Citra Medine. So you kind of like maintain your own hand advantage very differently. I think this combination is extremely powerful and very. I think that Luso was the shot in the arm that Medine needed. The only thing I could say is I almost wonder why we didn't go 3-3 on these, or 3 Citra at least for the extra burst. We maybe just didn't have room if we wanted to play the full 15 backups. Super, super cool list. Up next, we have Will Coghill on Knights. Knights, obviously one of the best decks of last set, and this looks exactly the same. There's almost no changes made whatsoever to this list. In fact, there are no new cards in the main deck whatsoever. I don't know that I agree with not having any new cards in it. I do like we didn't do the things some people do where you split your Agriuses. Like, just pick one. If you want to run the Bounce Agrius, I think that's like a defensible enough decision where I'm not going to like, bash you for it. I still like the 2-cost Ice one better. But again, like, you're splitting hairs. We're just maxed out on as many Knights as possible. I am a little bit interested to see if this deck is going to adopt either Parai to get more access to Gawain, or I really think this is a deck that is the best Nalapa deck in the format. There's this like way of turning off interaction by saying like you can do stuff, but the moment you do, I'm gonna pop you for it. The only other thing I would consider for this, it might just not have room for it. Run like I think Ovelia and I think that Lena are worth considering here. I think Lena turning off or like making your bursts in a 20 burst metagame draw for you are really going to help you to recuperate when you go into those matchups where you burst and die to it. And I think Ovelia, if the 13 deck with Sarah takes off, you need something to get your forwards out of the way. And I think even getting Kirill and Ramsey to 10k matters a lot. It really makes a lot of decks play awkwardly if 9k is like 9k is the bar that people are looking for removal right now. Getting them to 10k really does change things quite a bit. Yeah, getting all of your little knights to 6k, getting your big knights to not to 10k matters a lot more than you would think. Also, a little surprised to see some of the limit breaks, like Zach. I guess like the ping with the Garland can help with the Zach, but like going to one Surges is wild to me. Um, Same for like the Matt. Like again, like Matt's cute and then you keep your Ramza up, but like I feel like just removing the like blockers. I guess that's what Kuja's for, but Kuja's so much more expensive and deck doesn't play backups at all. So, 30 minutes in, I can kind of dive into the last bits of these. What are some other decks that did well? Second after Swiss was a 4-color good stuff deck, like the Cecils. Interesting to see only 2 of the 20 Cecil. With the amount of damage going around, maybe it's a little bit risky to play a self-damaging card like that as one of your main engine cards. You have the Rosa Warrior of Light Une package in general. Ceciling in Warrior of Light has always been a very good thing to do against aggro decks. Makes it very difficult for them to play the games on occasion. Formelda, obviously, is a very powerful card. Particularly in a shell like this, because you can go like Cecil, Warrior of Light, Formelda, and now you have the Cecil protection with Warrior of Light. Formelda is a removal engine, or just like then can play the Rosa from hand. Could be really, really powerful. 3 Zidane, I think, makes a lot more sense. This format with Hitlo Deus combo. I actually wonder if we'll start seeing a shift to Opus 3 Zidane in the future, because it's so much faster. And not have or being able to like get 1 card for 3, but not having to find the 2 colors for it. I really kind of wonder if that's going to be a thing in the future. Especially for Monowind, who I think just doesn't have an option at this point. I think Monowind almost is going to be priced into playing the Thoughtseize Zidane because they don't have a choice at this point. You have to rip out the Hitler combo before it goes off. What else do we have here? One person doing the mono ice discard stuff. They're on Rufus Rug. Again, Japan has really switched to Noctis over Rug for this deck. Similarly, like I wonder, like should the Physalis just be Anima if the goal is like to punish your opponent for going to no cards in hand? Like you're probably going to be on very few cards yourself, and that way you just like kind of win the game by doing that. I feel like. That's the immediate swap that I would make. No Argath as well. I feel like Argath is just really good in these decks. Everything else makes sense for the most part. Cisne is actually kind of surprising. I sort of get it, but like also like she gets what 2 attacks the turn that a Reno comes into play. Or like she gets to attack with Reno, and then if they live, Reno attack, Cisne attack, or Cisne attack, Reno, Cisne, Rude, Cisne. So maybe. Weirdly, Cisne actually had 2 tops this tourney. This is her. Yeah, last well with Rug is well established, but yeah, I really like the mono, the Noctis build just a little better these days. But Rufus Rug is a very powerful nut draw for sure. Alex Knoll, this is fun. This is a Turks list. that topped. um, yeah, I. It's interesting. I wonder if a couple of small things that came to mind for me. Rug is cool here in that like you can give your Reno haste without having to pay the one. I do wonder if this would be better off as a cloud to guarantee the President Shinra access if we are going for the starter Reno Rude plan. Maybe we're just not. And they're just like, that's the critical mass of Turks we need for Sung to consistently work. That could definitely be the case. But I do wonder if the 4CP Opus, what is it, 11 Cloud would just be a better option over the Rug for that, just to guarantee the Shinra access. It also would be removal as well if there is like a problem blocker. Could be good. 3 copies of Odin for burst. I've never been a fan of just chucking. Like I have 3 slots left. I'm gonna throw the best burst into the deck. I feel like you can usually find something that like synergizes with your game plan better than this. Maybe we just want these to have some form of removal, but I think in that situation, we have enough lightning cards. You can probably cast this for 3 a lot of games, but still interesting. Okay. The last deck I want to talk about, a lot of these other ones we kind of have talked about in like one form or another, is the bottom card that made top 16, and that is Hythlodaeus Combo. And boy, do I have some thoughts about this deck. So if you haven't seen this deck, again, go to YYT, the YYT's channel. Steve has a fantastic video where he breaks down the deck, how it functions, walks you through a couple of combos. All of his examples kill on turn 3, which this deck is very capable of doing. And this deck is wild. The thing about this deck is it doesn't even need OTK to win. If you resolve Hythlodaeus 3 times in a turn, even if you like, usually the worst you end up with is like 5 backups and like 4 forwards on turn 3. Even if you get Shantoto'd, you still just get to like play a normal mid-range game from that point, even if you don't get the kill. But the kill is also very realistic and very good. I don't agree with some of the decisions in this deck. I don't hate like the electric jellyfish, but like I don't think. I mean, the demon maybe comes up in normal games of Final Fantasy, but like, are we playing normal games of Final Fantasy here enough where the demon matters? I do have big issues with the way that this deck plays. I think that like the ability to go Realm for Cleon, turn off all summons for the rest of the game from your opponents, so they can't interact with you that way. But they also can't interact with many onboard tricks because of the way that Emmett's Cell Hythlodaeus works, where you have the goblin suspended on field for haste. Let's say you have a card like a Poor Apalum, right? Well, the Palum is going to shoot for 8k. But if you time it properly, you can shoot the Emmett Selk and have the Emmett Selk shoot the problem card and just wait. If they go for the shot on the Hythlodaeus, you can then haste the Hythlodaeus and then do the combo from there, and they wasted their activation. But if they don't use it, then the target dies anyway. I really think it's just like really frustrating to play against, and there's just not sufficient counterplay to what this deck does. So much of the good monster removal is in summons in general. This deck basically like plays Realm, and if you don't Amat there, you don't Amat for the rest of the game. But like, you don't always have Amat on turn 2, especially if this deck goes first. It'll go backup Realm, and now you have a single backup in play, but it'll be dull. Like say you do your normal thing, you see the backup search, okay. You discard 3 cards to Amat the Realm, and then they can still go for Emmett Selk Hythlodaeus and just have it try to sit there for a turn. I don't know. But if you don't go for that, the Hythlodaeus gets covered by the Emmett Selk, protecting it in a way. Cards that could, in theory, stop the combo, like Ishtola Special, just don't really work against this deck because of the way Emmett Selk's ping works. It reminds me a lot of in Yu-Gi-Oh! Six Samurai. The few times you ever see somebody resolve Gateway of the Six in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! It's the only deck I've ever played against uh, in Dueling Book and gotten FTK'd was by a Six Samurai player. And it was the same thing. It was like once the ISOL resolved, the game was over. And he ran a bunch of stupid stuff like Eagle Booster that like basically is called by the grave, like stops you from doing things, which is what the Cleon does. To try to make it where you just it's not you can't interact profitably, and the combo gets forced through anyway, and you just kind of die. I don't think this list is optimal. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of the copy of the Demon or the Shadow Lord potentially. Like those could be swapped for cards that make the combo go off more consistently. We're missing the Hilda, which I think is actually like a really powerful card in this deck. Being able to just refuel your hand for 4 for nothing is just wild and super powerful. I actually like the copy of Materia here. That's not in the Steve D variant. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think this is what they had in mind when they printed Hitas, but I would also question what they thought was going to happen with Hitas, if not this. I'm starting to also say that like Regis and Renoa are like pretty much Isol's Armstead 4 Summon Armageddon Knight at this point. Like, if you see Regis or Renoa in a deck, that deck is not doing anything fair. That deck is trying to do something stupid. Um, there, I know that like there's maybe some value in having a combo kill deck in the format, but this deck does it so fast and with so little counterplay. Like I really don't like this variant. The other like classic combo kill deck that we had was like the Tilica loop decks, right? But those Tilica loop decks would take until about turn if it did it the very fastest, it would be like turn 4 or turn 5. But every single interaction would kill that deck. A Mott, any removal spell on the bounced forwards. Mist Dragon would do it to remove the summons from the break zone. Like everything that you did that interacted stopped Tilica Loop, which is why Tilica Loop was not played competitively very much. Nothing stops this in the same way. You have to like Ryan was Shantoto LBing on turn 2 to get a realm off the field because he had to be able to interact to stop the combo, and it was the only way to remove the Sahag and the Cleon. And even with that, he was going to like 2 cards in hand to his opponent's 5. Like it's rough. I don't know. It sucks. I like Emmett Selk. I love the lore behind the Emmett Selk Hitler combo. I would just like for something to not have to deal with this deck at Nationals because Hythlodaeus is a card that I just don't see being used in a fair or fun way for the other player. Was playtesting with a friend this deck just to, I was helping Alex get back into the game because he kind of has taken some time off since last Australian Nationals. And I go turn 1, play a backup, search Realm. He goes, oh, okay, it's a Realm deck. Yeah, sure. And then I go Realm, search Cleon, Goblin. And he just goes, oh. And I killed him on turn 3. And he goes, well, that was fun. And, like, that's just kind of what this deck is going to do to people. I think it's going to be very salt-inducing. There's counterplay, but the decks that counterplay this best, ironically, are, like, Mono Ice Discard, because you can't, like, play the Emmett Selk and Hythlodaeus, if you can't have cards in hand. Yeah, I mean, it's this deck is just kind of bleak to me. I don't know what to say about it. That's gonna do it for this video. Thanks for watching. At some point, I'll probably try to do like an abbreviated recap of like the Materia Cup Lion and the Perth Continental Qualifier, so we can kind of go over some of the decks from those. I think they are interesting, even if they are from last format. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.